Hey, this is Aaron with Breathe Free Academy. We're hitting the activist corner with Anam Paisenta and Mike Nelson. Um, Looking to highlight anything and anyone who can help someone live more free and live more independent lives in every area of their lives, including from government. And these are two gentlemen who have dedicated their time and energy, their business, and their lives to trying to make the world more free. Mike Nelson is a former Green Beret who's sustained 8 blast wounds to the head with a myriad of other injuries, including back and knee, and is currently blind. And his channel, Blind Justice, which there'll be a link below, focuses on holding government accountable and trying to highlight a lot of the injustices in our quote unquote justice system. And I have my friend Anna Paisenta here as well, who has written some books for freedom, including a children's book called Three Friends Free, um, and currently also mentors freedom lovers and anarchists in real estate and trying to achieve more financial independence, and is a founder of the Voluntaryist Brotherhood motorcycle clubs out of Las Vegas and Washington. Um, okay, guys, we don't have video for Mike. He's just doing audio. But I wanted to ask. Mike's also going through a current issue legally in the court, and I wanted to highlight and plug in. Anybody wants to call in with this call for this we're doing. But Mike, if you could describe some of what's been going on locally with the county and how your activism has taken a turn and kind of come to a head in this court hearing in Rockingham County, North Carolina.
Yeah. So I think that my primary focus with life is to try to limit and end human suffering. And if anybody is in listening to you and um, the content that you put out, they're well aware that number one um, culprits of violence against humanity and suffering is government. And so I figured a good way of helping us move the ball down the field towards freedom and a peaceful society is letting people know the actual extent of the violence in the system. Like a lot of people are not willing to try to get to any kind of change until they realize that the system is predicated on violence and that it enacts violence every day. So that's a lot of what we do on the channel is just everyday encounters with um, different government entities and then highlighting how they are predicated on the unjust use of force. And so here locally, we moved to North Carolina. We're in the process at the end of last year and to be close to some family. And we wanted to check out foreclosure lists at the courts because that's the only place that they have them. They keep them on a physical copy in the courts. They don't publish them online or make it available to be sent via email or anything like that. And trying to find out where there's affordable housing or houses in order to relocate. The courts wouldn't let me in because I use different assistive technology, and the courts in North Carolina, almost all of them have bans on the use of electronics in the courthouse. There's just some local judge made an order banning electronics, specifically recording devices, that they want to keep their proceedings secret and away from the public eye. And even though I wasn't intending to go in a courtroom, just getting access to the clerk's office to get public record, they weren't letting me in. So through a few encounters with different security at courts and at a county health department, some security guards attacked me, put me in the hospital with another brain injury, and come to find out later that they charged me with some charges of resisting an officer and trespass. So that case is still pending out of Guilford County. They, I was unresponsive when supposedly they took me before a magistrate and then into jail and back to the magistrate and back to jail and then dumped me unresponsive outside on the ground somewhere where the EMTs found me. But they weren't able to positively identify me in that case. And then 2 weeks later, in a little small town of Madison, North Carolina, Rockingham County, the local police took it upon themselves, we believe, to try to earn their stripes and show the city cops how to positively identify someone. So they approached me and my wife while we were sitting in our van in a church parking lot on a Friday night, February 21st. And the cops threatened probably 25 times to smash out the driver's side window where my wife was, because they demanded ID from everyone in the car. The officer is Keith Benfield, and he wouldn't tell us why he was demanding ID. He didn't tell us a lawful reason for his stop or his inquisition. And he just was hell-bent on getting IDs, at the point of a gun. So he eventually got access to the car. My wife rolled the window down, and he reached in and unlocked the door, physically removed us both, put us both in handcuffs, and they ultimately kidnapped me because I would not provide them identification. My wife did provide identification, so they let her go. And they are still charging me and have pending charges out of the Rockingham County Court of resisting an officer for simply not providing identification that night. And with that, I've tried to go to the court on this matter, and I asked for a reasonable modification under the Americans with Disabilities Act in order to have use of my electronics devices. Because like I said, they have bans on people using electronic devices. There are exemptions in their judge's ban order for medical devices, such as pacemakers and hearing aids and anything that you use to assist you because of a medical condition. And so my devices are likewise covered, yet the judge ruled against me. He took it out of an administrative request and actually made a judge's ruling in an order where he conveys a threat to hold me in criminal contempt if I go to court with my devices. So that's currently where we're sitting on that. It was scheduled for this Friday, October 2nd, and I just got word a couple hours ago that the judge is supposedly having a funeral that he's going to, so they're changing it now to October 6th. So that's showdown, is still pending, and really this fight is exposing the corruption of just the justice system in general and the collusion between local law enforcement, the DA's office, and the judges. But it also is a fight for openness of the courts, letting people have equal access to the courts, record their proceedings, not just for posterity or for sharing with the public, in a journalistic capacity, but for their own notes. Like in my situation, it's for my note taking. He's not allowing me to take notes during the proceedings or even have access to my notes or court preparation materials. So it's a clear due process violation and just injustice all around. We've gone all the way up the chain, like trying to work the process the way that we have available to us in peaceful ways to redress these issues in the government. We've gone to the police department to talk about reform and changing the policies and procedures. We've replied to the judge an email, and he's doubled down on his threats. We've gone to the administration of the courts, to the disability coordinators in the state level, and they said that their hands are tied since the judge took it out of the administrative realm and put it in the judicial realm. And so they're saying we have to get a higher judge to overrule this judge. We've gone through the AG's office, through the state legislators, through the governor's office, through the Judicial Review Committee at the state, through the State Bureau of Investigation, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Civil Rights Division, and the Federal Department of Justice that handles the ADA complaints. And all of those so far have not done anything to stop this tyranny of this local judge by the name Chris Freeman, or frankly done anything to correct the issues with the local law enforcement in the DA's office. So that's currently where we're at. I just filed today, maybe an hour or two ago, a remonstrance with the General Assembly. So that's the legislative body of North Carolina. And that is like an official petition, official protest calling for the impeachment of this judge. So if they follow their own policies and procedures, which they don't, which is a lot of what is highlighted on our channel, they don't even follow their own laws. They don't follow their own policy and procedures. They don't follow their own constitutions, and they expect everyone else to. So that's basically like the last thing I can think of is to do what we just did following this remonstrance. And if the General Assembly follows their constitution and their policies and procedures, they're supposed to, order a stay of this judge and his orders, and then inform him that he's gonna be under investigation and have an impeachment trial at the General Assembly. But I'm not going to hold my breath that they're going to do anything, because they haven't done anything thus far to show that they're going to play by their own rules.
Yeah, but more than that too, this has kind of escalated into more personal threats, not just in, being targeted by the police and the judicial system, but your family and yourself has been under fire. Could you describe how that's been kind of escalating a little bit recently as well?
Yeah, so since we took all the routes, in the way that they say they want people to redress grievances, right? We took all the filing paperwork, trying to get meetings, talking to the aldermen, the mayor, calling them, emailing them, asking for meetings, going to their alderman meetings, discussing the issues, and none of them responding, not even willing to answer. One alderman has answered the phone and said, "Oh yeah, this is a problem, but I can't do anything about it, about the police department and the corruption." So that's the only kind of response we're getting when we call the sheriff's department and let them know that the judge that works right next door to them is violating state and federal law, and even citing the state law that he's breaking. They laugh at us and said, "Well, good luck, get a lawyer." But they're not willing to do their own stuff. Since we've exhausted all the routes that is built into the system for redressing grievances and checks and balances, and the alderman and the mayor followed suit with proclamations of September 17th through the 23rd being "quote unquote" Constitution Week, which is laughable. We set to the streets Sunday, I think it's the 20th, and I held a sign on one side said "Happy Constitution Week," the other side said "Fuck cops," 8 letters, "Fuck cops." And with that, the response of locals were they formed an angry, violent mob that chased me and my wife around town for about 3.5 hours. They were blowing exhaust in our face, making it very hard to breathe. Two individuals physically, assaulted, battered me, and stole my sign, and then destroyed it. And yeah, they chased us through town, and were chasing us to our house, calling for people to chase us to our house. It was a modern day lynching. There was a guy broadcasting to his Facebook and calling for more people to chase us around and follow us to our house, and to get CPS involved to steal our kids, and talking about hunting me down with dogs. And he hosted a bounty of $500 that people were saying they would pay for anybody to go attack me and steal my sign. So that all of this was happening in the presence of local law enforcement, and they did nothing to stop it. In fact, the chief of police, Jason White, at one point on video went out and thanked the angry mob for their support. So this is covered under it's called the Kkk Act of 1871. It's more commonly known, or more recently known, as 42 USC 1983, and basically that came out of the South, where the KKK was lynching people, and local law enforcement were either involved with it directly as Klansmen themselves, or they looked the other way, knowing the people who did it, and weren't willing to stop the crimes and hold the culprits accountable. And so that's what's happening here in the little town of Madison, North Carolina.
It's times like this, and then especially you had a bout of torture in your cell last time they took you in. You were arrested with stripping you naked in your cell and lights all night long. I think it was 24 hours, you said, or something like that.
Yeah, so from that February 21st kidnapping, like I said, we were in the parking lot. They didn't take me straight to the magistrate, which they're required to. They didn't, because they didn't know what to charge me with. And the attackers said on scene that they didn't have a supervisor. Well, as soon as they took me to their police department, which is only a couple blocks away, they introduced me to their supervisor, Lieutenant Clint Smith. And I told him, like, hey man, what these guys are doing is criminal, and I listed all the different ways it's criminal, and told them that they didn't tell me what they're arresting me for. Can you at least find out? And you guys need to get these cuffs off, and we'll chalk it up to a lack of education and training, and we'll help you guys come in compliance with your own rules, policies, and laws. And he said, no, I'm going to back my guys, even though he didn't hear what they were charging me with or anything. Well, it turns out that guy is the fire chief here, and so
Yeah.
it's sad because once they took me to the jail, the cops lied to the magistrate a few times about the situation, and I refuted their lies and asked the magistrate if the Fourth and Fifth Amendment still applied here in Rockingham County, and he said, yeah, of course, you don't have to. You can be secure in your papers and effects, and you don't have to tell the cops anything. I'm like, great. So then release me. There's nothing that you have no probable cause of any crime. And after the cops struck out a couple times, they threw me in a holding cell so they can try to convince the magistrate of some bogus charge to lock me up. Eventually they did, some 20 or 30 minutes later. And they stripped me of my few remaining assistive devices. I use my hat and dark glasses to block out the light because of the brain injuries, like you mentioned. The light causes intense pain and eventually will leave me in a migraine state where I'm unable to move or talk. And they threw me in an isolation cell. And once they brought the nurse in to do initial medical intake, I was already having a migraine and unable to answer the questions. So the jailer said, okay, now since you're refusing to answer questions, that means that you don't want any kind of medical care, and that means you're suicidal. So they stripped me naked and left me in this bright isolation room for about 20 hours.
So hearing all these things, and I've been there in Madison with you a little bit, went to a local town meeting, and hearing kind of the story as it's evolved over the phone back in Phoenix. And but in light of all of this, I kind of want to touch on why it is, you do what you do, and what's driving you to stand on your principles so much in this situation, especially going into the court where everybody's, even your lawyers, telling you to, hey, just back down and do this and that, and you're trying to take a stand for freedom. And I kind of want to use that to circle back to Anna and talk about, the importance and, what this, advancing freedom means to us. You're under a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what's going through your mind in some of these scenarios?
Well, an injustice against one man anywhere is against an injustice against all men everywhere. So, if I do what the locals are all saying, oh, you could have just avoided this by providing identification, and then it would have been it. There would have been nothing out of this. And while they're probably right, because the police even said as much, that means that what they're doing is immoral. The attackers threatened to attack us and threatened to that we had to give them something, or else they could do more violence. And when I said no, they did exactly what they said they were going to do. So it really highlights the mentality and the violence in the system. And as far as the going to court and standing on the principles of demanding equal access, and in spite of this judge's order and his threats, like I'm willing. Not that I want to. I don't want to be locked up and tortured again, but I'm willing to pay a cost for freedom. And I'm kind of not too hopeful that that my efforts will actually change anything in the system. It's more that I think the system is beyond redemption. I think this is more to show and highlight the corruption and violence that the system is, and we spread the word far enough and wide enough that enough people will wake up and opt out of the system, and it will collapse. So it's not that I'm really hopeful that it will actually make it so that we have equal access in the courts or with government entities, because most likely they're going to double down and back their cronies and criminals that are committing these crimes. We're just exposing that we're giving them every chance to do the moral thing, and even not just the moral thing, but they're by their own codes and policies and rules and everything, what they say they are supposed to do, and they choose not to do it. So it really we're using this as a platform to highlight and expose it to the world, so people don't really have an excuse to not know that this is what's going on and that this is the system.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on what you do, Anam, and what it means to you. But do you have any commentary on what you're hearing there? It seems like this is a common thing that's happening across the country more and more these days with things with police and injustices, and it's a sad case.
So are you asking me, do I have commentary on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think that everything that's happening to Mike, and I do empathize with Mike's situation, but everything that's happening to him and his approach is kind of in line with the perspective of someone who doesn't understand what government is. No offense, Mike, but in my perspective, government is it's just organized crime, and the courts are not set up to find justice. The police are not set up to follow their own rules. None of the system is actually about any of that. It's about there's some rulers at the top and they want to be protected. That's all the court system is, and the police. The only ways to interact in a way that's going to produce justice is to get rich and then go where you're treated best, or use their techniques against them. So going in and being civil and following rules and expecting people to follow rules, that's not really in the playbook. Your options are, if you want some results from government, are get some dirt on them and then threaten to expose the dirt, or I'm not advocating for violence. That's always a last resort. But as far as you're just talking about which languages are heard by these aggressors, violence is one of them. And if people ever expect to be free, they're going to have to deal with the mafia on mafia terms. So if you're not willing to put physical pressure on judges and cops from rooftops, or by getting some kind of dirt on them, some kind of leverage, then your best bet is to move to a jurisdiction where they treat people better. And that probably is outside of the United States.
Yeah, no, nothing you said is news to me. Like, I absolutely understand. I absolutely understand that's the nature of government.
Yeah.
But the audience, the people that we're trying to spread this message to, they don't understand that. They think that it's actually a system of, of governance that should be followed. They believe in the Constitution, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I use statist language while communicating to the audience that, hey, look, you can do everything by the book and they're still going to use violence against you. Okay. Like, I'm trying to use this as a step-by-step approach to leading people to waking up to a realization that government is violence. It's a system of violence. Like, it's nothing new. What you're saying is not news to me, my friend. Like, it's the approach we're taking is intentional, not thinking that we're going to actually get them to play by their own rules, but to expose it to the public. That's why I said I have no hope that the system is going to correct. I have no hope that the system is going to self-correct. It's only to expose it to the public and let this be the red pill that helps them wake up and opt out.
Yeah, perfect. And what I just said wasn't really for you, but for your audience, I guess. It just reiterates what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I think anyone in your audience or mine or Aaron's that hasn't had interactions with the government or a court system probably does need to see this.
Yeah. Yeah, because they have faith in it. They have faith that there's redress. They have faith that there's a way of doing it. And we're told we are pulling every thread we can of redress that they say is the right way of doing it, and showing that they're still going to use violence, that they still are going to ignore, they're still going to trample you because they think of you as cattle, right? Yep, and that exactly. So that is the message. That's like I try to preface at the beginning. Our whole channel is to expose, to end human suffering, and a big part of that is we have to expose it. People don't know that what they're doing is violent. They don't know that they're paying into a system that's violent, and so we expose it and say, look, here's how it's violent from every office, from every encounter. And I think a lot of people miss that because they get caught up in the whatever the confirmation bias is, and they see, oh, look, this cop was actually a decent person when they talk to you. See, look, there are such things as good cops, and they miss. Well, no, he's there with the threat of violence, including lethal violence, if I do or say something that he thinks he can use that force against me and get away with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to use that as a opening to jump into what you're about, Anam. You know, talk about a lot about rights and these false illusions of, you know, that we, you know, supposedly have these rights, you know, and down the list. And Mike, in this case, has a right as a disabled person under the federal, you know, American Disabilities Act, but not only the federal American Disabilities Act, but the North Carolina state law in NCGS 168 Alpha, basically that it's illegal to prevent him, you know, his assistive devices, and yet the court is kind of is falling through on this. Kind of want to ask you your opinion on that, on, you know, how often these rights are upheld in the United States, and what your perspective on that is.
Well, rights is part of the lexicon of our oppressors, and it was taught to us in their school system, in government school system. There's actually no such thing as rights except for contract rights. So what they tell us are our rights are actually unilateral promises without explicit consequence. So, like, you know, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, or what?
Yeah.
It doesn't say no one in this government will enter a bill that restricts ownership or carrying of firearms. And if that person does enter a bill to that effect, he will have summary judgment by an extrajudicial committee outside of the system and summarily executed. So that's how a contract would be written. You do this,
Right.
and I'll do this. And if I don't do this, this is what happens. And if you don't do this, this is what happens. So that's where rights go from the ideal world to the real world, is that we not unilaterally make promises, because that's nothing, but we actually commit them to paper and sign them. That affirmation is saying, I agree that this is actually reality now, and you agree it's actually reality now. And that's what contract means. Contract means pull together. So
yeah, no, I agree. The you know, rights are a construct of the mind, and there's a saying, it may be a quote unquote maxim of law, that rights without remedies are not rights at all.
Yep.
And I think that's really what you're talking about, is like, if somebody wants to put it down in a contractual way, then it says, if you do this in this contract, then I'll give you this. But if you fail to do this, then I'm not going to give you that. And not only that, if you screw me in this contract, then I have a remedy to make sure that I get compensated for how you screwed me.
There should be some kind of like collateral or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Have a remedy, but they're putting off the federal suit. You can't even pursue that until this local thing is settled. Correct, Mike?
Yeah, the way that this, you know, crazy system is set up, like, if you clearly the cops attacked me and my wife, clearly the magistrate, you know, and you know, the supervisor went along with the kidnapping, the magistrate went along with the kidnapping, the jailers went along with the kidnapping, right? There should be remedies that I can seek to be compensated for the torture and the kidnapping, and in order to do that, you have to go through the civil, quote unquote, civil courts and file a suit, typically at the federal level. But if I tried to file that today, or, you know, immediately after the attack, it would be immediately put on hold, because they are still pressing criminal charges against me. And so they wait to find out if they can get a judge or a jury to say, oh yes, no, Mike's the bad guy, Mike's the criminal, and that therefore all of our criminals are justified and their kidnapping and torture of Mike, because Mike was a bad guy. And if that's the idea, that they're trying to and this is what they do to everybody. They railroad people. They continue their cases, or they kick them down the road, kick the can along to make them waste time and money, and, you know, take time off of work, or to pay attorneys fees and hours and stuff like that. So it becomes so much of a burden, where they look and say, well, what is the penalties if they do get a conviction? It's just a little fine, or it's, you know, time served, or it's probation. And say, well, that's cheaper. The cost to me is going to be cheaper to take the plea and take the guilty, whatever, to go ahead and just end this, rather than fight it, you know, and fight the system. And most people take pleas. I think the neighboring county, they have a 98% conviction rating. It's just, it's laughable. It's ridiculous because they know they have the monopoly of violence, and if you try to stand up against them, then they try to crush you in every way they can.
Yeah, that seems like the norm these days. So I wanted to circle back to you, Anam, and talk about what you're trying to do and move freedom forward, and then try to open things up to discuss kind of the most effective ways in trying to change things around us, especially all these lockdowns during COVID. I just saw another CDC came out with a report saying only 6% of the COVID deaths were COVID only and not like COVID with another cause of death.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty staggering. So what are you trying to do for freedom and for advancing all of that during these times?
Well, my activism so far has been, I'm one of the founding members of Voluntaryist Brotherhood Motorcycle Club. And I think that the reason I do that is because I think it's important to have a support network. And the four functions of VBMC are family and defensive militia and business and agorist network. So we're trying to kind of create a mini society that we can get everything we need without interacting with government, and then having remedies if we're forced to interacting with government that might go beyond begging and pleading. I wrote this children's book about freedom called Three Friends Free, and that's available on Amazon. And then I also teach anarchists how to invest in real estate so that they can become more powerful, because even though the government is basically the machine of evil, the fact is a lot of our freedom is due to our own financial circumstances. So, and that part we can control. We can't control that mafia that calls itself government is huge and seemingly omnipotent, but we can change the fact that we're broke. And there are some easy ways to make money, both in lump sums and in cash flow, monthly cash flow scenarios. And until anarchists do something to empower themselves in ways they can, they really shouldn't expect to empower themselves in the more intricate and difficult ways. So yeah, there's like your sphere of influence and your sphere of awareness, right? And working on your own finances so that maybe you can move to a place that treats you better, to quote Andrew Henderson, I think is one of the ways we can take personal responsibility to gain more freedom in our own lives, and also become more valuable to these support networks, right? Support networks doesn't mean you have 7 people around you that are supporting you. It means you're a member that can offer something to support them. So making yourself powerful in the first place is, I think, paramount in the development of freedom-loving adults.
Absolutely. And you're looking at the situation and considering places outside the U.S. Currently, you're in Vegas, I believe, at the moment, or
Yep.
But how do you see the way the country is going and kind of freedoms? What's your outlook on some of that?
I think that there is, I mean, this what it appears to me is that there is a group of people with power above the government we can see, like above the president, and that they can pull strings that pretty much operate all the way down to street level through, the Senate and the House, and then local lawmakers, and then the police and all that. And I think that even though that group acts somewhat globally, America has the resources and the technology and the power of their currency, that most of the actions that are going to really clamp down on freedom for people are going to happen in America. So that stuff's also happening in other technological countries, developed countries in the world, like England and Australia. Those places are even worse than America. But I think that it is good to have a backup plan. It's like another house in another country that maybe you rent out on, maybe you just vacation rental it out for now. But I'm reminded of the story of the Jews in Nazi Germany, in that, according to the story, the Jews that had enough money to get outside of the country are the ones that survived.
Yeah.
And so I think that when you're outgunned, you should have an escape plan. And so you either need to get good at, you either need to have good strategies for offense or good strategies for defense, or both if possible, right? So having a backup plan, and that would probably be outside of the United States, is, I think, a really good idea for a lot of people.
Yeah, especially if things keep going the way they're going. But then there's a lot of cause for hope too. You see a lot more people paying. I mean, it depends on who you ask and where you are. But people highlighting injustices, paying attention more, changing as far as eco options, organic options. Opting out of different things, gun rights. And some things kind of come along. I was very encouraged being at Anarchists and some of these other places. Just the numbers and how exponential it's gotten in the last 5 to 10 years. I'm curious. I just kind of want to open it up to both of you and start talking about the freedom movement in general, especially in some of these times coming forward with a possible vaccine on the horizon and things going on in the U.S. What you guys see as kind of the next fronts, going forward. Obviously, financial independence and confronting government and highlighting injustices is what we're mostly talking about here between Anam and Mike. But I'm curious. Also, advice for young people who want to do something and try to make a change, because there's a lot of people who are wanting to get out there and get out locally and do more things and, film police and do this and that. And I'm kind of curious. I'm, look up to both your guys' opinions, known you guys for years. Your outlook on what might be most effective for someone trying to move the needle forward for freedom in the United States.
I'll let Mike go first on that one.
Yeah, I think I'll tie in some of what Anam was saying, that, and I'll kind of work in reverse of if I can remember what your question was. Jordan Peterson has a book out. It's called 12 Rules for Life, and one of them is clean your room, and and basically that the message there is take on personal responsibility and put your own house in order. I think what Anam was, the way that it falls in with what Anam was saying, is like liberate yourself financially so that you can move, so that you have a backup plan, so that you have ways that you can contribute into the cause more than just sharing ideas and ideals with people around the world in different formats and forums. Like one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the freedom movement is there's a lot of idealists. There's a lot of people that espouse the ideas of freedom and of anarchy and of peace, but it's sadly been no different than when I was wrapped up in the death cult of the military or wrapped up in the cult of religion. That majority of people don't have the discipline or the personal integrity or responsibility to actually walk out their ideals. So that's, that just goes back to clean your room, be responsible. If you actually espouse a belief, then walk it out. And when we call for people to stand together to protest some injustice and people don't show up, they said they would show up or contribute in ways that they said they'd contribute, there's a lot of backing out and flaking out. And I like a lot what Anam said about having a agorist organization and ways to be connected with people, to not do business with government, and then have a plan to respond whenever government says, no, you're going to do business with us or else. Like, I really love that idea, and I think we need more people, not just talking about it, but building systems in place and communities where we can actually live that out and cover each other. I don't know if you put any stock in the Cato Institute, but they have a a freedom index, and I think they list the United States as number 14, which I don't know about that, but it's definitely not number one like a lot of people think.
It's been falling every year too.
Yeah. So, and there's state by state, they list them. So I like the idea that Anam said that we need to kind of vote with your feet. Go to where people respect your autonomy, where you get treated better, and you can find that list of state by state freedom index with the Cato Institute as well. And we do that from time to time, like me and my family, where we kind of get burnt out on getting railroaded and attacked and all that, being victims of the violent system, and we take a break from activism and go. We were in Mexico for five or so months last year and enjoyed a lot of freedom there. And so we do that where we pull off and step back and say, okay, we did enough, for moving the needle for freedom. But then something, I don't know, there's something in me that just says, hey, I can't sit idly by in my nice castle somewhere where I know that people won't mess with me. If I know that my brothers and sisters are still being tormented, are still being tortured and kidnapped and murdered in the streets. So
yeah, it's sad to see. I thought about that too, and I'm trying to build my foundations and some of that, and but I've thought about the backup in Mexico as well, but U.S. is kind of my home, and I do kind of agree with Anam when what he was saying on this being one of the forefronts and one of the leaders in the world on when things change here, they tend to change a lot of places, and there's a lot of I spent some time in the military spying on Iran, you might say, or I was a Persian linguist, and a lot of the even calling yourself a libertarian out loud in some of these places is immediate cause for disappearing and death, and their drug dealers are killed, and there's a lot of things that happen here. We have one of the highest prison populations, the highest by certain metrics, for sure. But it's important. It's sad. I grew up thinking that we live in a free country, and then I signed up for the military thinking that that I was contributing to that, and then it's been an interesting process. Mike can relate to and kind of being disillusioned with what we're told. But hoping to explore on some of this channel is ways to live free and advance some of that. And Anam, I'm curious your perspective on the way things are going in the country and what activism means to you.
Can you ask the question one more time, Aaron?
I'm curious your perspective on the way things are going in the country and what activism means to you in relation to that.
Well, how things are going in the United States. Well, so this COVID thing is definitely a mind prep. It's getting people, it's a step because they know they can't move. They can't move towards slavery too quickly in too big of steps. They have to acclimate us towards it. This thing about forcing people to wear masks and forcing business owners who played the business license game to treat the customers certain ways. This is all just steps towards the vaccine and eventual computer chips. And yeah, I think that is happening in the United States. We're on that path. And there's other countries that are much less on the same script. So what does activism mean to me? I mean, well, the reason that my activism is kind of maybe a little bit less towards waking people up because that's like one of the first, of the 3 A's, awaken, and then activism, and then agorism, right? So like you awaken yourself, activism is waking up other people, and then agorism is actually providing something, creating something that can help people like detach from government or move away from government or defend from government. And I think that what I want to focus on for my activism is actually empowering people to become more than they are so that they can have more options. And one thing we can do that actually does, it is political, but it still has some amount of effect on the government, is leave. So if there's no, if all the cows, like they see us as cattle, if all the cows just grew wings and left the farm, that cow would be, or the farmer would be screwed.
And you're speaking more in agorist terms as well, as far as like not participating in some of the systems and building your own things outside of, what's currently, the open range tax farm, as you might call it.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody out there has read Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership, I always look back at, well, what did we do, or what did I do that led to this? So like, you have to wear a mask to go to the grocery store. Whose fault is that? It's our fault. Okay, it's the grocery store owner's fault because he played the business license game with the government, which is fucking stupid to allow government to have any say over who you serve. But they did do that. And then it's my fault for not having started a agorist grocery store in my garage that other anarchists could come to. So whose fault is it? It's my fault. Everything's my fault. Like ultimately, it all comes down to my fault. I didn't start, and you didn't start, and no one else started a grocery store that doesn't require masks, and it also takes Bitcoin and doesn't accept government money. So therefore, it doesn't exist in the world, and that's our fault. And so we're forced to use, not forced, but it seems to be our only option to use these grocery stores that are inside the government paradigm, and they're running on script, and they're going to be used as tools in our slavery, just as our neighbors' minds are. Literally, how are we all going to die? We're going to drown in the wool of our neighbors.
Right.
That's happening to Mike currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the Hitlers and the Maos and the Stalins of the world that are the real threats. It's all the people that say, "Oh yeah, it sounds great, let's do that."
Yeah.
Why aren't you wearing a mask? You're going to kill my grandma.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other answer, Aaron, to your question, why do I do this, is that I have this idea that there is another level of human social evolution that's waiting for us in the future, and it's voluntary society, and it is the only spiritual form of social arrangement. Like we came here and we lived, like an observation, right? Let's mix in some stoicism and some secular perspective. We live in these bodies that just do two things. They try to live a long time. Every system in your body tries to live a long time, or it's taking in signals and adding meaning to these signals. So that's what is that? Sensing. You're sustaining and sensing. That's all your body does. So life must have something to do with those two things. And if we look at that sensing part of us, and we can deduce that we're here to gather these experiences that affect us. We're supposed to have an authentic interaction with the world and with nature. And government literally is the gatekeeper, or it tries to be, between us and an authentic interaction with nature. It's like if our mission in life is this thing that we can deduce by looking out at the bodies we came to live in, then government is evil because it's antithetical to our mission in life. Like it literally is the thing that's keeping us from doing what we came here to do spiritually, our spiritual mission. And so there's nothing bigger. There's not a bigger topic in the world. To me, anarchism is like just a kind of a piece of this much bigger picture, that I'm here to have an authentic interaction with nature. That means when I make a decision, I get the consequences. And when someone else makes a decision, they get the consequences. When Bear Stearns writes these bad loans and they know it, they don't get a bailout from the government that actually comes out of my pocket. See, like government is like, all it really is the divorce of power and responsibility. It's the externalization of responsibility. And it's why does someone want to do that? What's the purpose of separating power and responsibility? Theft. It all started with some caveman somewhere, back in, I don't know how long ago, thousands of years ago, wanted to steal something from someone else, but didn't want the retaliation of getting hit by that other caveman, right? So he developed a story. How can I steal that guy's stuff without the repercussion? So how can I have the power without the responsibility? And so he developed a story about why it's okay for him to steal from his neighbors. And once he got his neighbors to accept the story, because they're gullible like we all are today, then there you go. That's the basis of government. I'm a special class that gets to initiate force on the rest of you, and you have to fucking just put up with it. Because, God said it's so, or I have this special hat or this special fucking,
my brain's bigger than yours. My muscles are bigger than yours.
Something like that, yeah.
Because it's been democratically approved by a majority, which is still a, kind of a ganging up on the minority.
No. That's even worse.
Exactly.
Because that's a further
divine right of kings into everybody believes the divine right is justified from basically.
And people think that democracy is an evolution from monarchy. It's not. Yeah. Because when a monarch stole from you, you knew who did it.
Right.
Democracy is a de-evolution. It's actually worse than, because when the power is, the responsibility is separated from those with the power, now we don't know, because that's been dispersed among all the people. Now you've got people that are blaming the other side, like Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
Like, this is the ultimate mind trick. If I was the leader, this is the first thing I would do, is set up a parliament, and I would have two sides, and I would have all the people believe, like, pick a side, and then I would keep all the power, and I would never face the guillotine, because everybody thinks mistakenly that they have the power. That's the whole trick of democracy. It's a mind game.
Yeah, I think if you go back to the etymological root of religion, it comes from a Latin word that basically means like to relegate, or to go backwards, to subjugate, or to submit. And so like the religion of statism, where we have the evolution of it, where it was the caveman that, hey, my muscles are bigger than yours, I can offer more protection, or I can hunt, I can get more food, so you guys need to listen to me and give me part of your stuff or else. And then it became the those that could think and outthink the big muscly guys, and it's like, okay, no, my brain's bigger than yours, so I have these systems and these plans. If we all do it, then everybody will be better off, so you all need to give me portions of your things because I can think. And then it became just a combination of that, where it just was warring warlords that could think and plan, and then get the muscly guys to do their bidding to war against other people, and then haul off their peoples and wealth. That's where you have monarchs. And then you have they didn't like getting their heads chopped off and having armed revolutions, where they're the ones that everybody knew it was this king, so if we want to topple the regime, that's the guy we got to take out. So they came up with these systems that they relegated back to a system that is very much religious and requires ceremonies and special garments and special words and things like that, to sell the illusion to a people that supposedly were more enlightened, than the cavemen. But it had to be packaged in a way where people could believe that they actually have the power when they don't.
Yeah, it's just really evolved marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is Sarah Shoemaker, libertarian activist and photographer, working with Free Academy. She wanted to say some stuff on democracy in the current situation.
Oh, did I? Oh, I was there was something I wanted to interject earlier. I guess from when you're talking about the psychological perspective of what government is and how it divides us from being actually um, in tune and with our environment. Um, I'm a recovering codependent, and in the process of recovering from codependency, I have seen, well, most of the people I've connected with that are also recovered codependents are anarchists, because we did not just uncover the codependency in our lives, but the structure of codependency that is being placed on every human being on the planet. Everyone has been forced into codependency.
Yeah.
I was able to leave my ex, but I can't leave this planet. Not yet, anyway. So there's the unhealthy struggle of being codependent is divides you against yourself. It goes you're going against your own authenticity and who you are and what you're supposed to do. What your path is, because you are being told no, and you can't say no to me, and you have to do what I say, and if you don't, I will hurt you. I'm speaking from personal experience and also from seeing that.
I can barely hear Sarah.
Oh really? Wait, so did you hear any of that?
Maybe until the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it.
All right, sorry. I'm okay. So I was just commenting on
The nature of codependency and government, and her experiences, in
Yeah.
marriage and stuff like that.
They literally use all the exact same tactics that the narcissist does to Stockholm syndrome or in any other way keep a codependent dependent on that learned helplessness, which basically brainwashing they do, that government's here to take care of you. And the worst thing is, that I experienced personally, is you need me. You can't, and being instilled with this idea, you need me, you can't live without me, which is instilled in us from our childhood, from the moment we have given a social security number without choice.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. We are a microcosm of the system.
My sister said something really interesting. She's not involved in any particular group or party, but she was involved in the Libertarian Party for a while, and she's just sick of the whole thing. But I asked her about something, and she goes, "Well, it doesn't matter. I don't believe in government." I was like, "Is that your stance? Is that your I don't believe in government." And I was like, "That's actually kind of genius." She said she's a government atheist. She doesn't, and which is basically, I don't recognize you as an authority. I don't. So that's how she lives her life.
It's been interesting to see that happening more and more too with the defund the police movement. It's little things like this that I'm kind of nice little hopeful things during all this, but then of course they're trying to use it to turn it around and show people how they need them. But Minneapolis defunding their police force and just using it for social programs or nothing, and a few other localities exploring that. It's very interesting times.
Yeah, definitely.
We're doing a call flood for Mike coming up soon through the Breathe Free Call Flood network. I'll drop a link to that. Trying to call into the sheriff's department, asking if they're going to enforce the law, basically, because under the North Carolina law and the Constitution and the American Disabilities Act, Mike should be let in and not arrested under the judge's order. We've seen call floods work in the past. Friends of ours who have had over $100,000 in fines, and other things that just from $700 a day from camping on your own land, and other crazy issues completely disappear, with thousands of people calling in and showing that they don't support this, asking questions, and shining the spotlight of attention on an issue. It's kind of beautiful. It's something that we're starting through our channel and our activism, and we're highlighting Mike's issue coming up. Drop a link to that, as well as his channel, and Anam's book, and PREMA, which is a great program helping people find financial freedom. I encourage you to check it out. And the Voluntaryist Brotherhood, if you're freedom-minded like us, and want to, meet a good group of guys who are trying to change and build a family situation. And it's been really great talking to you guys. I don't know if you have any concluding remarks on anything that's going on.
No, I mean, just you guys know anything about like a good way for people to connect and support each other in a freedom movement? I know there was different applications out there. Self 411, I think, was one a few years ago. I heard there's one called the Minutemen app, and I don't know if you guys have any experience with that or knowledge of that, or if there's any better way to mobilize a bunch of people that want to stand up, whether it be defense or offense, against the tyranny.
I'll leave that to you, Anam. I've heard of Cell 411, but I'm not familiar with a lot of other things.
Yeah, I would say right now, Cell 411, where you can send out an alert to your cell, your network, might be the best thing available right now. And then I have an app that I invented called Connector, and it's been on the shelf for a while. We haven't been working on it for a few years. But Connector will be like a social media that happens in real life. It's a way to see like your crew or people who share affinities with you on a map, and it encourages interacting in real life, like actually meeting up in real life versus like Facebook, where you may be living next door and not even know it. So until that comes out, until we get that finished up, something like Cell 411, or there's analog, old school things that we can do too, like get together with people and then say, hey, if this happens, we all meet here, armed, or with first aid kits, or with fire extinguishers, or whatever. Like we can make plans like in real life that get activated on certain events. Even like recently, like when this COVID panic started, I spoke with my stepfather here that lives near Las Vegas, and we made a plan, like if communications go down on cell phones, like because this was still before I was sure if there was going to be unrest or not, if the stores were going to close down and people started getting violent, stealing from each other, then I put these certain plans in place. And one of them was with my stepdad. I said, hey, if cell phones go down, we meet the next day at this location at noon to make a plan to go further from there. So like we should have all that, right? Like all the anarchists should already have a plan. We meet at this location. If they say the vaccines are going to get mandated, we all meet at this location and we devise a plan for self-defense and mutual defense. Like, or if there's a fire at one of our houses, everybody comes with fire extinguishers. Or if one of us gets in a car accident, send out a text alert or a Cell 411 alert, and whoever comes with first aid or transportation or whatever. Like these in real life plans can be set kind of ready to go for the event that activates them.
I was just going to add that I always encourage people to have maps. I want to learn Morse code. I want to, I don't even know the military alphabet, but to start going back to traditional communication and navigation methods. Also, if you don't know how to drive stick, for goodness sake, learn how to drive stick. It's
Yeah. Yeah, especially with Google Maps.
Oh wait, no, you do. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I forgot you
I
do.
drive stick and a motorcycle.
There's a lot of men in the Libertarian Party. They can't drive my car.
That's funny.
And I'm like, what if you're in a situation where the only vehicle you have is a manual? It's not that uncommon. Well, I mean, it's becoming less uncommon, but like basic things that we are, not taught intentionally. Like we need to encourage people to understand that this isn't a bubble we're living in, and that we have to have the grid could go down anytime, and we need to be immediately able to self-sustain and organize.
Yeah, especially with Google recently during this COVID stuff, that was something that kind of went under the radar, but they're just giving up location data without warrant now to the government. That's huge. I use Google Maps and I'm like, great, like this is like the new some of the new struggles kind of coming up for freedom, and even for if you're a constitutionalist, fourth and fifth and all the amendment rights. I mean, and then in Mike's case, Eighth Amendment, getting tortured in his cell and possibly again coming up. So it's crazy times.
Well, the truth is, if you can't overpower your enemy, you have to outsmart them.
Yep.
And so if people committed to learning, things that society has mostly disregarded as being useful, even maps, like I collect maps, because what if I need to get somewhere and, I have no ability to connect to technology. This whole technology thing, relying on technology, needs to stop. I mean, it's great, but we need to understand that
it's a double-edged sword.
Well, we need to understand that it could be removed at any minute. And
well, not only removed, but like once the vaccine mandate comes out, we have to ditch our phones.
Yeah, well, depending.
They have location data, and they have your name and location data. Whether you turn whether you turn your GPS on or off, they know where your phone is. There's no way to turn off your phone's location.
But yeah, that's true. I guess we'll see kind of what comes about from that. But going back to Mike's original thing, the reason you're asking that, Mike, is that related to getting people to show up in like defense of your family? I know there were some voice mass calls with threats to you guys as person.
Yeah, no, it wasn't specific to our situation. It was, I think Anam nailed it. It's all of the contingencies,
Yeah.
Having backup plans and having a network, knowing exactly where the allies are, and not a statist neighbor who's gonna, be the Nazi next door that calls because you're hiding the Jews in your attic,
Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy times. Well, I really appreciate both of you guys for your time and support everything you're doing. I'll drop links and hope to talk to you later.
All right. Nice to meet you, Mike. Hope we interact again soon.
Yeah, man. Back at you.
All right. See you guys later.